Welcome to the PowettPlay Podcast, where international cricketer Kieran, Powell and marketing genius Shannon join forces, bringing you captivating conversations with the biggest players in cricket and business. Join us as we dive into the lives of current stars in the cricketing world, the legends before them, and those extraordinary icons whose performances changed the game in both cricket and business. Exploring journeys both on and off the pitch, the boardroom, and everything in between. Get ready for an exhilarating blend of cricket, life, and business insights, with two insatiably passionate, infuriatingly no-holds-barred hosts, who, unfortunately for the rest of us, live and breathe this stuff for a living.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 41 of the PowettPlay Podcast. I'm your host, Shannon, and as always I'm joined by my co-host, Kieran, Powell, and today we're joined by Mr. Roland Butcher. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing very well. No, it's a great pleasure to be doing something with Kieran again.
No, we're looking forward to having a good chat about your life in cricket and things, and really that's where we'll start. So, where did your love for cricket come from?
That's a very good question. I tried to find out from my old folks exactly just how I got involved with cricket. To be quite honest, I mean, I grew up in a family dominated by women, really. I lived with my grandmother, my aunt, and there were 7 grandchildren that my grandmother looked after. My grandfather had died from my father's side, had died very young. So I was in a house of women. So the fact that I got involved with cricket is quite scary because even though women in the Caribbean at that time loved the sport, I think perhaps the only one in my family that would have loved the sport was my cousin Monica, who was my aunt's first daughter, and she loved the game of cricket. But the early years, obviously, I would have started, I guess, 6, 7, just playing with the kids, and it developed from there. But my cousin actually took me to my very first game. I was probably around 13 at the time. So that's the first time I saw a game, and she took me to see Australia against West Indies at Kensington Oval.
Right, okay.
The fact, I guess, that we had Basil Butcher, who's part of the family, was obviously a West Indies player, but he was away in Ghana, so, we would listen to it on the radio. But in terms of getting involved with the game, I just think it was the local boys,
playing
a lot of informal cricket, and that's how it started, really.
Right, okay. And then at what age did you start to compete, sort of playing, really?
Yeah, I think I probably played my first game, I must have been about 11 or so. I went to the primary school I went to was St. Catherine's Primary School, and didn't play a lot of cricket. Right. If they played 1 or 2 matches a year, then that was fine. But I think I probably got into that school first team when I was about 11.
Right.
The primary schools then, I mean, you were at the primary schools then until after 13, because the only school I went to in Barbados was that particular school, and I left when I was 13 and a half to come to England. But in those couple of years before I came to England, we did actually get some coaching from Charlie Griffith and Seymour Nurse, 2 famous Barbadian and West Indian players who at the time were also working for the National Sports Council.
Right.
And the job for them was to go around to the schools and coach cricket. So they probably got to our school maybe once a month.
Right.
But we always look forward to that once a month when they came, because, we were getting then some professional tuition by 2 current international players.
Definitely. And was you always a batter?
No, that's a very good question. The funny thing was, Charlie Griffith, who was a devastating fast bowler, actually taught me how to bowl leg spin. I think he probably looked at my height and realized that I was never going to be tall enough to be a fast bowler. But he taught me how to bowl leg spin. And in actual fact, while in England, when I played for Hertfordshire Schools, I played as a leg spinner who could bat.
Right, okay.
When I went to my club, Stevenage, I was a leg spinner who could bat. When I was at Gloucestershire as a young player, I was a leg spinner who could bat.
Right.
And when I went to MCC Young Professionals for my first professional contract as an apprentice, I was a leg spinner who batted. So I would bat late order and bowl leg spin. So it was just the 2 years at Lord's that my batting really came on, because obviously I'm not spending a lot of time doing it. And I did less and less bowling after that.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, I wasn't expecting you to say that. In terms of obviously coming over here, how did you find it in terms of obviously playing in Barbados, then coming over here? Like, it's a big difference.
Yeah, there was a big difference. Very, very difficult to start with, really. Problems I would have had is obviously living in Barbados, which is sunshine 365 days of the year. Coming to England, I arrived in May, and it was pretty cold then to me in May. So coming into a new country, new culture, new people, new family. In actual fact, when I arrived, in addition to myself and my sister who were born in Barbados, we had also here 2 other sisters born here and 2 brothers. So, I hadn't seen my parents for since 12 years, really.
Right. Okay.
So,
wow.
It was difficult having to adjust to, new family, new country, weather, new schools, and also realizing that everybody played football and not cricket. So, those were some difficult times.
And in terms of the football in question, how quickly did you take to football?
Well, in actual fact, I got into that quicker than the cricket because, as I said, because everybody was playing football, the friends that I made were all playing football. So really, for the first year or so, I didn't do any cricket at all. Football took over completely. I'd never played football before, so it was new to me. And, I loved the sport and really got into it. And, I only really got back into cricket through football and a bit of luck, really.
Right, okay.
Usually at weekends, what we would do is as kids, we'd go to the local parks and, we'd just play football for hours and hours on end. And that was a normal thing we did on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
One particular Sunday, we just finished. It was about 1 o'clock. And as you know, those local parks are multi-sport. So as we were packing up, some guys came onto the field and put up some stumps. And then one of the guys wandered over to our group and said, "Listen, guys, we're a few players short. Would any of you guys like to play?" And the prompt response from all of us was no. I mean, we're cold, we're tired, we're hungry, we want to go home.
Yeah.
And also, in those days, obviously, football was on the TV as well, so that was always planned.
Yeah.
And one of my friends kept pushing me and said, "You like cricket? Why don't you play?" Because I spoke to him about cricket in the West Indies. So he kept on and on and on. And eventually I decided to play. Just ran home, told my mother, got a white shirt, came back, played. It was Stevenage 30-11 that was playing.
Right, okay.
Didn't do anything significant. I think I took a couple of catches, got about a dozen runs. But the worrying thing was that they invited me to play the next week. And, my mind thought, well, obviously they're going to be short again next week. But I went and played. And from there, really, it was all up. From there, I quickly gravitated to the second 11. And by the time I was 15, I was playing in the first 11.
Wow. Right, okay. So you mentioned before, obviously, from a professional perspective, you was at Gloucestershire and then the MCC Young Professionals. So was it from there that you then went to Middlesex from the MCC Young Professionals?
Yeah, again, what really happened was, again, another bit of luck. While I was at Stevenage Cricket Club, one of the players in the club, a chap by the name of Cyril Hammond, was the man. He was a player. he was also a football manager as well of a local club, Biggleswade. So he also got me to play for Biggleswade Football Club. But the bit of luck for me was when he got a job at Gloucestershire County Cricket Club.
Yeah.
As the fundraiser. So he left Stevenage, went to Gloucestershire. Obviously, I didn't know what was happening, but what he did was he recommended me to Gloucestershire as a young player, someone they should have a look at. So Gloucestershire invited me to come to Gloucester during the summers. So I went there for 2 summers, spent the entire summer at Gloucestershire playing for the youth.
Right.
In those days, all the boys would live at Bristol in the dressing room. They had everything, sleeping bags and TVs, and the coach's wife, Graham Wiltshire's wife, would come in the morning, cook breakfast for all the boys. Then we'd go off and play the matches. So the first year I stayed with Cyril. Second year he said, I think you should stay with the boys and get to know them. But after that, Gloucestershire then decided that I was perhaps a little young to come on the full-time staff. So they sent me up to Lords for a trial with the MCC Young Professionals. While I was at Gloucestershire as a youngster, Jeff Howarth, who was the New Zealand captain eventually, he was our captain in the youth team.
Right.
At Gloucestershire. And, Zahir Abbas and those guys were young players. Mike Proctor, those were in their heyday. Right. It was a fun time to be there. So I went up to Lords as a young professional in 1970. So I was at Lords 70 and 71. And the MCC Young Professionals, which is defunct now, which is a great shame because so many first class and international cricketers came through that organisation, that it was a shame that they closed after COVID, because it was closed for a couple of years. They didn't reopen it. But for me, that was really the training ground for us to become professionals.
Yeah.
The fact that you were being, you had full-time coaches, you could practice all the time, you played second 11 county matches, you were well looked after, you had the opportunity for other counties to look at you.
Yeah.
I had 2 fantastic years there at MCC. I was there, Ian Botham was there with me at the same time.
Football, had the football interest there as well then.
Yeah. Ian Gould and, a number of others first class.
Yeah.
In actual fact, out of our group, I think about 11 of the players played first class cricket after that, of that group. Okay. So while I was, obviously, MCC is based at Lords, so it means that Middlesex has an opportunity to see the players on shore.
Right, yeah.
As you know, the norm is when a county wants a young player, usually he comes and plays second 11 matches for the county and they look at him. And I didn't have to do that. They just offered me a 3-year contract straight up. And, as a youngster now, because as a kid, I just wanted to play international cricket. I didn't know, obviously, it would be in England or first-class cricket. So you obviously jump at the opportunity. After I signed that contract, obviously Gloucestershire were not at all. Sorry about that. Just 1 second. As I was saying, Gloucestershire were not at all happy with the situation, and quite rightly so. But as a young player, somebody who just wanted to play cricket, I didn't really understand that I really needed to be loyal to Gloucestershire. I just wanted to play here. This contract's been put in front of you.
Yeah.
You're at Lords, so naturally you took it. So that, in the end, I guess it was the right thing for me, because the way my life panned out after that, it worked out very well.
Yeah, of course.
What Gloucestershire were not too pleased about was, in actual fact, my first class 100 was against Gloucestershire. And so that didn't go down too well. But, I was fortunate really to be at Lords, to be seen by Middlesex and get the opportunity.
Did Gloucestershire was there ever talk of them offering you a contract at all?
Well, normally what happens in the case of people like Ian Botham and Ian Gould and others, normally what happens is that when your time is up at the MCC, you
Yeah.
go back. You go back to the county. So
Right.
both of them, when his 2 years finished, he went back to Somerset.
What's that? Yeah.
Barry Lloyd went back to Glamorgan. Rodney Youngton went back to Glamorgan. That's what was supposed to happen, but obviously I was not aware of how these things work out. So
yeah.
But these things happen for a purpose, and it was really the best thing that could happen to me, really.
Yeah. And how did you find settling into county cricket?
Well, look, county cricket for me, settling in was quite easy because I came into Middlesex at the time when there was a change taking place in terms of the old guard going out,
right,
and the new guard coming in. Mike Brady had taken over, I think, the captaincy the year before at Middlesex, and the only old players left at the time were Fred Titmus, John Murray, John Price, Peter Parfitt had 1 year, then he finished after that year. But then John Price finished, so then there was just Fred Titmus and John Murray from the old brigade.
Yeah.
So Mike Braley was now bringing in the younger players. So John Embry had started the year before me in 71. I started April 72. Mike Gatting came in the same time. Ian Gould came across with myself. So it was a new young team with a new and futuristic captain. So it was quite easy for me to settle into that. It would have been difficult if I had come into the old guard, because in them days, it was like the young players were seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Mike Brady was changing all of that. He was now challenging the young players to have their say. What they said was important. And, with the older players before, you just come in the dressing room, you sit there, and that's it.
Yeah. So did Mike Brady really have quite an impact in you in those early days then?
Yeah, most definitely. He did with all of us, really. I think he really understood that, he was really looking after a new era of Middlesex cricket.
Yeah.
And he was going to do it in a different way that it was done in the old ways.
Yeah.
Right throughout his captaincy, he would involve the young players, not just having them speak in the dressing room, but, on the field, the young players were asked, to be involved and what they thought was important. I mean, one of the things he would actually do is, when you're newly in the side, he would come next to you and he was asked a question like, who should replace Wayne Daniel from the nursery end? And most young players would, their mouth open, not knowing what to say. But what those players did was that after the first time, they made sure that the next time they asked, they had an answer.
Yeah.
That continued right throughout. He didn't always agree with you, because a lot of the times I feel that slipped next to him and he would say, Roland, Wayne is finished now. Who should I bowl that in? I would say, well, John Embry. And he was saying, no, I don't think so. I think so and so. But the fact that he asked you and listened to what you said, even though he might have gone a different direction. And that was with all the young players. So all the young players really felt, empowered, and on the field, everybody felt like a little captain himself, instead of a little boy in a big team.
Yeah. You can see why Middlesex had that era of success throughout that period of time, because of the way, like you said there, and the way he captained the side, but also like involved people's thought processes, and ultimately probably led the development into them trying to learn the game, but also like from a leadership perspective as well, where you're probably creating 11 leaders within that side as well. Yeah,
most definitely, because then a lot of us went on to actually captain this, captain Middlesex, and that's really the way he brought things through. The important thing, I went to Lord's recently on a tour. I was doing a lunch tour with some people, and we got into the Middlesex dressing room, and I was quite astonished by stat that I saw on the wall in the dressing room, because between 1970 and 1995, Middlesex had two captains, Mike Braley and Mike Gattin. And between 1995 and now, Middlesex had 31 captains.
Wow.
So that says something about where the team is right now, and where it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
31 captains in that period, and but those two captains, they were in charge of the most productive years in Middlesex cricket ever.
Yeah, of course.
Those two.
No, definitely. And then in terms of obviously the, making your international debut, how did you find out?
Yeah, that was an interesting story, actually, how we found out. I was at Lord's practicing in Middlesex. We had training that morning, and when we finished training, I was just heading to lunch when my wife called me and asked me, is it true that you've been selected for England? And I said, no, I'm at Lord's here. Nobody's told me I'm selected for England. So I said, well, why are you asking me that? She said her boss told her. He said he heard it on the radio. I said, well, I haven't heard anything. And I'm right there at Lord's, and our office is right next, Middlesex office is right next to the ECB.
Yeah.
I went about my business. I was home about 6 o'clock in the evening, and then my father called. He asked me the same question. And again, I said, I have no idea. I told him I was at Lord's. Nobody told me. And then 9 o'clock, we were at home watching the news on TV, and there it was on the news.
That's crazy.
That's how I found out that I was selected for England. And obviously that was for the ODI series against Australia.
Yeah.
No, the test was even more bizarre because the season finished in September. Then I took my family off to Canada for a family holiday, and I was staying with one of my cousins. I didn't leave any foreign address with anybody or numbers or anything. And one day I was at the house, the phone rang, and my cousin said, "It's for you." And I said, "It's from England." I said, "For me?" And when I went to the phone, it was a reporter. Somehow he tracked me down to tell me that I'd been selected for England. So that's how I knew that I was selected for the Test tour of the West Indies.
Wow. The way, well, like I said, this day and age now, it's completely different and stuff, but two very unique stories in the way that, to hear the news or something like that. So fantastic. And obviously at the time, being the first black person to represent England, how did that, was it discussed? Was it talked about? Was it something that was, did you realize what sort of big deal and important thing it was?
Well, it wasn't a big deal and important thing to me. It was to everybody else. Everybody else was talking about it. I wasn't, I wasn't that interested at the time, because for me, it was, what I'd been aiming for as a boy in Barbados, play international cricket. So that's all that really mattered to me. The fact that I had now realized the dream, albeit in another country, but I had now realized the dream that I had all those years ago. Yeah. And I was looking forward to playing and doing well. It was only later on, really, that I understood the significance of being the first. When the likes of Norman Cohen's and others who are my teammates, Devon Malcolm and others, felt empowered by the fact that I had been selected, and they suddenly thought, well, hang on, if he can do it, I can do it as well. So that came to me later, but at the time, my only thought was of playing and playing well.
And how was it quite a surreal feeling to represent England in Barbados against that great West Indian side?
It was, but I guess the fact that I played in England first helped me, because I played against Australia in the ODI series. And I think that was it was a good start for me to be playing in familiar grounds here in England, and with the players obviously that I had been playing against for many years. And also there was quite a few players in the Middlesex team that was in that team as well.
Yeah.
Again, I was lucky that him both of them was the captain, so that was that was good. So that prepared me, for the team dynamics of the England side, because most of those players went on that tour.
Yeah.
Going back to the West Indies obviously was going to be a different kettle of fish, because you were now playing against a team that hadn't lost for God knows how many years in the series. So, a formidable team all around.
Yeah.
You had batters. You look at Greenwich, Haynes, Richards, Lloyds, Gomes. You go down the line, and then five fast bowlers in Holding, Roberts, Garner, Croft, Malcolm Marshall. So a formidable team. So that always was going to be a surreal challenge. I think the other thing that really concerned me at the time was, how would I be received around the islands. I mean, I knew Barbados wouldn't be a problem, but I couldn't be sure, how the other islands, which would have been Trinidad, Jamaica, Guyana, Antigua, would go. But I was pleasantly surprised that everywhere that I went, I was really treated like a returning hero. So that was nice. That was special.
Yeah, that was nice. Sorry, Kieran, I feel like I've just been going along with myself again, as I always tend to do, to be totally honest with you.
No, I'll jump in for a bit then. I want to ask Roland more, obviously, around his recent post as a selector. From your vantage point, obviously having looked at West Indies cricket for pretty much all your life, and now on the other side of being involved in West Indies cricket as a selector, what would you say is or are the problems facing West Indies cricket? And I don't say West Indies cricket team specifically, West Indies cricket on a whole, structurally.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Kieran. West Indies cricket, as you said, the team takes care of itself. Yeah. But there are some inherent problems that West Indies have to solve if they really want to be a force in cricket again. Obviously, they're under-resourced. You can understand that, because they will not have the same pull. A team that has been losing for 30 years will not command the same as in England or Australia or in India, who have, they get big crowds, lots of big sponsorships. So they're going to be better resourced. But with what resources we have, they need to be used and used properly. The areas that I see that we need to improve big time in the Caribbean is we need better pitches for a start. That is a number one priority, right? We need pitches that are going to produce good players so that batters, bowlers, everybody has a fair chance. I think the pitches are dreadful for first-class cricket. The second thing is our first-class season is
void.
Yeah.
This year you played 6 games or whatever. I mean, can that prepare you to play Australia in the 5-test series? Or, you're playing on poor wickets, you're playing only a few games. Really, I feel sorry for your players that you then have to be put into that situation to take on people who play on very good pitches. They're used to, in Australian state cricket, almost in every game somebody scores a double hundred. They're not scoring a double hundred because the wicket is bad. They're scoring a double hundred because they're good pitches. Fast bowlers can bowl well. Everybody's in the game.
Yeah.
Even top players come to the Caribbean. And I say the players I'm talking about, the Kohlis, the Steve Smiths, Joe Roots, and they struggle. Now, if they struggle and they play a lot of international cricket, a lot of first-class cricket, what do you expect is going to happen in the Caribbean to guys who hardly play any first-class cricket? The franchises, need to become more professional themselves. I'm talking about, the coaching and everything around the franchise. And I think the curators, we need to create a situation where being a groundsman is considered a proper job, and they must be paid properly. Right now, the groundsmen are somebody who asks to come along and just do a job that nobody really treats him with any respect. He's got a family, he's got kids, and he needs to be treated with respect and paid properly. I think if you get those things right, they will feed into better cricket, better players, and ultimately, you would get a strong West Indies team. If we don't address those, we're going to have serious problems. I am seeing the same type of pitches being prepared. I mean, this last Test match, if you look at the 3 tests against England, you look at those pitches, and then you see this one here, where the players maybe started to get a little bit comfortable on these pitches. Suddenly they go back to that in Trinidad, and it was like, you just got to fight. Nothing for bowlers, nothing for batters. We've got some problems.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's before even going to that, I think it baffles me that for a region that, as you say, is blessed with let's say 360 days of sunshine. Let's factor in hurricanes and bad weather, etc.
Yeah.
You have somewhere like England that has probably 7.5 months of bad weather and has a full season to the point where they've even crammed in the 100. And then, as you said, the Caribbean has at max 7 first-class games, 10 list A games, and so you're talking about you're having franchises and professional cricketers playing 2.5 months of cricket out of the year and getting paid for a year. Like, how can that make sense in any? That's like going to school and getting the test at the end of the year.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, really. As you said, we're blessed with very good weather for 365, and we don't utilize it. As you said, place like England, you've got a long winter season, but there's some. When I played cricket in England, the season started the end of April, and it finished the first week of September. Right. Now, England have gone to the point now where this year I commentated on my first game. This season started the 5th of April. The first game started the 5th of April. Mm-hmm. And cricket is going to go on to the end of September. Yeah. 2 years ago, I commentated on a game
in October.
Surrey, Lancashire in October.
Yeah.
Right. So they have stretched the season into even areas where the weather could be troublesome. Mm. We've got 365 days, and we still continue with 6 games max. Before that, it was 5 because we only had 6 teams. Cannot prepare you for international cricket. Impossible.
You think that there's a shortage of coaching or coaches in the Caribbean at the moment? Because obviously, I mean, when you'd have grown up, and I guess coming along the years, it would have been more so you go to your club and it's the senior players, the guys that would have gone overseas and played club cricket in England, coming back and creating that club system, that club ecosystem that sort of bred players to go on and play for the national team. And then obviously the national team would have had its senior first-class players, its international players that would have bred cricketers. But no, you sort of see, I guess, the same coaches being recycled throughout the Caribbean. So if a guy loses his job in the Leewards, he might get a job in Barbados, and that guy from Barbados might then go to Jamaica. But you're not seeing any fresh ideas coming into the system. Do you think that's a problem?
Yeah, that is a problem. I think what's happened with the coaching in the Caribbean is now that they have moved really to certification only. And, so persons, once they've got certificates, then there's a certain number of those who've got it. So as you said, it then circulates amongst those persons, the jobs. So they go from one job to the next. I think the franchises I don't think the franchises are vigilant enough with the coaches. I don't think they demand enough from the coaches. Most of the time, the coaches do pretty much what they want to do. Not a huge amount of plans, or they're not accountable for anything. And I think that is a problem in itself. A lot of them just see it as a job where they pay the salary, and that's pretty much it. So the coaching, I think they need to not just have the coaching certification, but I think a lot more work needs to be done with our coaches. I think the franchises need to also invest in the coaches, try to get some to go overseas, even for short spells, go to, if they can say, listen, they can talk with the Indian Cricket Board and get a couple of coaches to go there, spend some time, a couple go to Australia, a couple can go to England, whatever it is. But they need that exposure. They need to be up to date with what's going on around the world and not living in this little cocoon in the Caribbean where you feel you know it all. And similarly, we need to do similar things with players as well. I know there's been a problem in England because of the managed migration system, which has stopped a lot of our players from playing overseas. Even players below the first class level who used to make a living overseas, it's much more difficult for them to do that now. All that is also contributing to where West Indies cricket is right now, because in the past, before the likes of Ambrose, Roberts, Richards, Croft, Marshall, Holding, before those guys played first-class cricket, they were playing for a league club, some league in the north, right? And really, that's where they were building their career, because at that time, if you were the pro, they would play 50-over matches. You bowl 25 overs, and they changed the bowl in the other end. But that was good for the players because it really taught them how to be professional cricketers. Now you don't even get the chance for young players to come in and play cricket, even as an amateur, because of the situation. So those are issues that we have to deal with. Our system in the Caribbean cannot produce consistent international players. There's too many things have to change.
So from a selection standpoint, because I think this is something that the entire Caribbean and probably the world would want to know, what is the selection criteria of the West Indies?
Well, I don't know what it is now. I mean, they've changed the system now. Right now, I understand that the coach and the captain now selects the team. That's the direction that they're going. But, there was quite certainly when I was there, the criteria within 6 months. But in the meantime, the coach and the managing director got fired as well, who introduced it. So that didn't last very long. But I see West Indies seem to want to go to this football style, making the coach and captain accountable. Different to football. Football, you were with those players every day, all the time. West Indian players, sometimes you don't even know where they are. Yeah. They're spread all over the place. Captain and coach, to have the only say, I'm not convinced that's going to work.
Do you think that West Indies cricket is stuck on a treadmill or a hamster wheel per se? Because since I can remember starting watching cricket until now, it's always been sort of the talk of we're investing in youth, we're picking youth, we're going for youth movement. So you're talking about 30 years of investing into youth. But you look at the world, you look at society, you look at business. I don't know any top performing businesses that are run by youth, if you understand what I'm saying. You have to have experience coupled with the youth for fresh ideas that can be molded to take over once those experienced personnel move on or retire, whatever the case may be. But I just think that, there's a very strong push for youth, but then you're expecting youth to win without any experience at the international level. And as we've already touched on, there's definitely not enough first-class cricket played as well. So there's no experience at that level as well. So how do you sort of combat that? And this is going to be sort of a long answer from you because it's a long question from me. But you look at sort of two of the, I guess, last two guys to be selected that have done reasonably well out the gate, which may have surprised most people. You look at an Nkrumah Bonner being selected at a later age, and now a Kavim Hodge at a later age. And I think that's just in keeping with what we're saying with the lack of first-class cricket. These are guys that have played first-class cricket in Caribbean for 10 years, still only played 50 games, but they've played a lot more cricket than the youth. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're absolutely right. And you've picked a very good example there in Kevin Hodge. Kevin Hodge, 13 years ago, went to Darren Lehman Academy in Adelaide. Him, Hayden Walsh, he was there with Joe Root. They were there together, right? Kevin Hodge was considered in that group the best player. The head coach told me that. He's a personal friend of mine. Hodge was the best player there. We know what happened to Joe Root after that, right? Joe Root's going on to be one of the best players in the world. He got 32 Test hundreds. Hodge has just come on the scene now, and he's got 100. And as you said, he probably would have played 50 games in that entire period. Now, if it has taken him so long to get to where he's got now with the experience, a young player like a Mackenzie or somebody like that who's had to be thrust into the deep end, unless he is going to be exceptional, right? He's going to struggle. He's going to show glimpses of what he can do, but he will not be able to sustain it because he just does not have that experience behind him of matches. Now, if you look at Jamie Smith came into the England team only now.
Yeah.
And Jamie Smith has got a vast amount of first-class experience, first-class cricket that he's played, right? So the chances are of him succeeding and consistently succeeding are very good because he has come with that experience. But, you're bringing in, players, people are expecting great things of Mikel. Louis, Mikel's played 6 games or whatever.
Exactly.
What can you expect from him? He's a baby in terms of first-class cricket.
Cricket.
Cricket as a whole, he's a baby. But people will expect him to set the world alight at the top in international cricket. So, yes, I think people like Hodge and others, for me, because of our system makes it far too long for those guys to actually come through. And then only a few will come through. So it's a system failure. We have to change that system so that players are coming through at age 23, 24 with good experience, and they can have a good, long international career. I mean, Hodge is 30, right? He's now making the breakthrough now. How long is he going to have? For players coming in at 23, 24, and he's got good experience behind him, you got more of a chance of having a consistent performance. You asked me a question whether we're stuck on that wheel. Yes, I mean, I guess that wheel's been going around for the last 30 years, and it's just a recurring nightmare. Every year is the same thing. Same thing happens over and over again. Same results. Get one or two results, and then back to the. So that has to change. If it doesn't change, you'll just be on that wheel, as you said, just going round and round and round, and not really making any input. And you have to change because the world of international cricket is changing, and it's changed to the point where, you know, it is now about finance. It's about money. Those big teams are not going to sit around waiting for you. You know, they're going to look after themselves. So it means you're going to be pushed further and further into the background because you can't compete on the same level as them. You know, so you will be forgotten. You will get basically the crumbs of bilateral tours, etc. Those others will play more and more against each other. So that's why it's so important that we get it right, so that, you know, our performances are more consistent, that those big teams want you at the table. Right now, you know, so you're begging right now. You're asking for handouts. And that can't be the best way for West Indies cricket, who, you know, rule the world of cricket. Before they were coming to you to want to be part of the setup. Now our cricket has gone in the opposite direction.
So, with that in mind, do you think that there is, I guess, an ageist system in the Caribbean where people think as long as you're 30 plus, you're old, and that needs to be rethinked?
Well, with the current system in the West Indies of producing cricketers, age 30 cannot be considered old, because it's only by that age that you're now starting to get the experience necessary for that level of cricket. So that thinking really has to change. I mean, the idea of youth is fine, but if youth haven't got if things haven't been provided for the youth to be consistent at a high level, then, you know, players age 30, you cannot consider them to be old, because they're the only ones with the experience.
Mm.
And you look at in Australia, for example, brought back Usman Khawaja at 34, and now at 37, this is the best spell of his international career.
His career. You know, people like Mike Hussey and those guys, when they started late in the career. Yeah. Mike Hussey started internationally with he had 10,000 first class runs.
Yep.
He didn't get that in 1 year.
Exactly. What do you think of the impact franchise cricket has had on West Indies cricket? And further to that point, is there a franchise premium in terms of being selected into a West Indies team? Because that's a notion felt by domestic regional players that don't go to the franchise system.
Well, it shouldn't be, because for me, the, you know, Test cricket really has been pushed a little to the side by the international game itself, because the fact that the T20s has now become so popular around the world, that's the new cash cow. That's where the focus is. You know, West Indies will play in the next year, whatever, 7 Test matches. I mean, you know, it's that 35 days.
Yep.
But who can have a job for 35 days in a year, and pay what they get paid, and it's sustainable? It is not sustainable. So, because, you know, the white ball game has marginalized, you know, the longer form players. And, as a result, a lot of players want to be involved with the shorter form of the game. I think really most of our players should try to get into the test side, because that puts them also in a shop window. It is much harder now for a young player to get into the franchise setup, because we don't have our own T20 tournament in the Caribbean, so there's a CPL. So what you get in CPL is a recycling of players.
Yep.
There's no new talent coming through. You don't know who the new talents are, because all that new talent is playing right now is club cricket, and no franchise is going to go and sign somebody from club cricket into his franchise when somebody's just left the Barbados Royals or Trinidad Knight Riders. He will get a job somewhere else. Yeah. So they have an issue in new talent coming through, right? If you look at the teams that's going to take part this year, show me the guys that you don't know that's come from anywhere else. Yeah. The guys that they've been somewhere last year, or they didn't get picked or whatever. But these are the guys that and they haven't done anything to show you. The ones that were not picked last year, there's nothing that they would have done in that format to show you that they should be selected this year, because there's no competition for them. It's club cricket. So that's another issue that West Indies have got to solve. I think there need to be a regional T20 tournament where new talent can emerge, and then make it to the next level, which is CPL, and out of that. So that's the area that needs to be dealt with. And the Caribbean is suffering as a result of that. It is not conceivable. It's not inconceivable that the next IPL, the only players you may have in the IPL might be Narine, Russell, Pooran. It is not inconceivable that they may be the only three.
Oh. Of all that's there right now, you don't think that there'll be any getting back in?
Oh. What are they doing? What have they done? They were there last year on the bench, right? The only ones that played last year on a regular basis was Pooran, Hetma, Narine, Russell. I would be very surprised if the majority of those get a contract next year, right? That has to be a worry.
Oh. Shea played more than he didn't play. But...
So locally, something has to happen to make those guys play and perform and be seen. Otherwise, what are they going to do? They go into the CPL. But I'm interested in new talent. How can you get new talent if there's no pathway for new talent to emerge?
Just the last question for me. What would you say was your high point as a selector, and what would you identify as a low point?
I'll do with the low point first. Well, being fired when I thought we did a pretty good job. that was a low point. I think certainly in the year that I was a selector, I thought Desmond Haynes and myself did a pretty good job. I thought we started to get the sort of results that we were looking for, and I think that came because we were very honest with the players. Didn't make the players any promises
at all,
and was not influenced in any way by people in the system wanting players selected. We went about this that we would look to select what we feel, is the best at this time to get the job done. So I think we remained honest and committed to that. I don't think we wavered in any form. I think the fact that we were able to, as you said, look at a Kevin Hodge, and recognize, obviously, what he had been doing for a while. He'd been stuck in the system for a while, but first of all, picking them for a team, seeing how they develop, sticking with them. The Athenases, etc., etc. I think the high points for us was to see those players come in and show glimpses, because we couldn't expect them to be taking the international game by storm, but to show glimpses that what is possible. They're still learning, but I think we left the job feeling that we done a pretty good job, and happy the way things went. Didn't happy the way things turned out, but this is West Indies.
High point.
What do you say the high point was?
High point for us, I guess. I think as a team, I think the results that the team got in that last year, I think was very much the high point. We won a Test series in Zimbabwe, won a T20 series in South Africa, drew ODI series in South Africa, beat India in the T20 series, beat England in an ODI and a T20 series. Then a team results, one in Bangladesh, good results in South Africa, won the ODIs in UAE. So I think the high point for me were those collective results of a team and international results in that last year. I don't think we've had a number of results like that for a very long time. So that really was the high point for me. 2023 was a very successful year for West Indies senior and A team. Disappointments, obviously not qualifying for the World Cup in Zimbabwe. That was a huge disappointment.
I've got a couple of questions I wanted to ask you, one of which sort of relates to what you're saying there in terms of the last 12 hours we're bringing in Kevin Hodge. And you mentioned, as you discussed there in terms of coming in at a bit of a later stage in his career, would he have got, or do you believe he would have got the time if he didn't hit the ground running, even though he had that the experience, or would it have been a case of because he's at that age and he didn't get going, he would have been swapped over, and they would have gone with the youth that like Kieran's been speaking about?
Well, if I was there, then I wouldn't think so, because I would not expect Kevin Hodge to come in after all of these years and really take the international game by storm.
Yeah.
I would be looking for signs that, yes, I belong at this level.
Right.
The fact that he has gone a bit beyond that, is great. But certainly, if I was a selector,
yeah,
I would not be looking to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah.
I would have certainly be keen for Hodge to be around, and I know Hodge will go back to first class cricket and perform, because that's the sort of player he is. He's an industrious player.
Yeah.
So he would always have his name somewhere around the setup.
Yeah.
But the fact now that he's been successful at that level, is a good thing.
And then the other thing I was going to ask you, obviously, with with your role as a selector for that period of time, me and Kieran on this podcast have spoke so much about communication. We've had guests on who spoke about, we had Stuart Law on, he spoke about certain times in his career in Australia, the communication didn't take place. When you was in that role as a selector, did you feel that you communicated enough to the players in terms of one, if when they made the squad, but also on the other side of it when they didn't, and if they came to you with various reasons or whatever, did you feel that the communication was carried out from your side of things?
Well, I certainly thought so. In terms of communication, I think first and foremost after any selection, the process is the chief of selector contacts the players who are playing, and also he then contacts the persons who were left out. Yeah. So that's the official part. After that, me as the other selector, my communication then was with the players, or if somebody wanted to speak to me. There was like times where Bonner was left out of a series, and he got in touch. He wanted to talk, etc., etc. Even though the chairman had already spoken to him, but then we still had meetings with them. So what we built up in that year with the players was that I think we had a much better rapport with the players than they've had in the past. It was not a case of us and them. I think a lot of the times in the past, selectors and others have felt, withdrawn from the players. That's not how we saw it. We saw it as we're all in this together. We're interconnected, and if we select a side and they don't do well, the fact that they don't do well, it affects us as well. So we felt that closeness and that togetherness with the players. Even to this day, right? I am not a selector anymore, but I communicate with all of those players in that team on a regular basis, right? We're still communicating, and I'm no longer a selector because that's the level that we built up with the players during that year. That to this day, I can send a message to any of those players and he responds straight away, and we have a conversation. Yeah. Which wasn't the case always in the past.
Yes. Yeah, no, which is, I get that. That's nice and, good to do that, really. I wanted to ask you as well, you mentioned at the start about the process from a selection perspective and certain criteria. Yeah. And one of them that came to my head when I was looking and reading about your role within that was obviously Shamar Joseph, who came out from there. Talk me through his selection a little bit, if you don't mind.
Right. Shamar Joseph. Now, I went to Ghana a few years ago, myself and Andy Roberts. We were invited by Barbados Cricket Board to come and do some coaching. I saw Shamar Joseph. We had a conversation then. At that time, he wasn't deadly serious about the game of cricket. Right. No. When he started to get into the Ghana side, he came to me and he said, "Listen, can you remember the conversation we had in Ghana?" I said, "Yeah, I do." Boom, 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 boom. Well, he said about 6 months later, I decided to really take this game serious. Right. Now, as a selector, Desmond and myself were the two selectors, and obviously the coach. So during the first class season in Antigua, Desmond was watching the game at Coolidge. I was at Sir Vivian Richards watching the game, and the game was Ghana. Ghana was playing. Shamar Joseph was brought into the team as a replacement for Powell. Powell was injured, and Shamar Joseph brought into the team. And he got 5 wickets and bowled fast, he bowled full, etc. So I went back to the hotel, and that night Desmond and myself met. I told Desi, I've seen a guy that that's the sort of guy that we need in this setup, Shamar Joseph. As the case is in West Indies cricket, Kimo Paul was fit for the next game, so they dropped him. Even though he took 5 wickets then and was the outstanding bowler. So he got back in, played a couple more games, and that was it. Now, he played in the 50-over competition as well. And again, you know, he was good and fast and whatever. And then obviously when the A-team tour was coming up, the next A-team tour was South Africa, and then the full team was to Australia was straight after.
Yeah.
That. So he went to South Africa, and he got 5 wickets in his first game in the first test, A-team test in South Africa, and bowled well, which then got him selected because you're going now to a similar place like Australia.
Yeah.
And you need fast bowlers. So we select him to go there, and he got 5 wickets in his first game there as well. So but he was someone that I certainly felt from the first time I saw him in his first class game, that he was somebody that, you know, could be an asset to the team. Yeah. And you know, the other person that we've been working closely with is to get him back into the setup really was O'Shane Thomas. You know, we don't have a long list of fast bowlers in the Caribbean, I can tell you. And someone like O'Shane Thomas really has been languishing in the backwaters for no reason. But here's a guy with genuine pace. But what a lot of these players need is somebody to actually get hold of them, take an interest in them, and get the right programs for them, etc. Now, O'Shane Thomas, the beginning of last season, you know, we had a good chat with him and said, listen, you know, we believe that, you know, you can be part of this setup, etc., etc. You know, and he was keen. He then started working with Usain Bolt, with Johan Blake in Jamaica to get himself fitter.
Right.
The other thing we realized is that we had to get him out of Jamaica because, what do you say, not a lot happens. So he then got a contract to play club cricket in England. Before he went, I spoke with the trainer, Dennis Byam, and asked Dennis to prepare a training program for him, which Dennis did. And, you know, credit to him, while he was in England, he did that program religiously. He would send me, I got it here on my phone, all the videos he would send me of his training sessions, etc. And he got himself in really good order. He wants to play for West Indies. You know, he came back. He was around the World Cup team. He was around the one-day squad against England and India, etc. These guys just need somebody to take hold of them and look after them. The other thing is, I then spoke to Enoch Lewis and said, Enoch, you know, try and see if we can bring him to the Leewards so that he's out of Jamaica into a different system. We've only got a few fast bowlers in the Caribbean, right? And a lot of that is to do because of the poor pitches we have. But the ones that we've got, you know, you've got to keep them in the setup. I mean, there's one other young fast bowler we have there that I think, again, is being wasted. There's a guy in Jamaica called O.J. Shields. Very quick. If somebody gets hold of him and keep him in the right situation, he could be a real find for West Indies cricket.
Aye.
I think, I mean, I'll touch on the points that I can attest to. Definitely O'Shane, obviously playing with the Leewards and stuff like that. I know his his passion for the game. Like, he's someone that many have spoken here and there over the years, but obviously getting to know him personally, as you said, he's someone that I guess just needs to be in the right system, and I think that he was very, very comfortable in the Leeward Islands system last year. I think that unfortunately in the Super 50 he didn't have the wickets to reflect the way that he bowled, but in my opinion he bowled extremely well. The partnership that him and Alzari forged in terms of creating a lot of pressure at high pace, which is something that you don't see in regional cricket quite often. I mean, you look at, I guess, other teams and the kind of starts they were able to get off in other games as opposed to against the Leewards. They were creating a lot of pressure, getting wickets at high pace, and Alzari sort of reaped the rewards. But I think that O'Shane bowled as well as Alzari, and he wasn't able to sort of get that reward. So I'm just hoping for his sake, he can sort of go back and have a similar, if not better, Super 15 in terms of the way he bowled, because there'll be days that he bowls a lot worse and gets way more wickets. You know.
I mean, I was at the game when him and Alzari bowled at Brian Lara. Though that for me is what is about. Pace at both ends, and high pace.
And it's good to be on the field. It's good to be in the slips. It's good for, I guess, West Indies cricket on a whole, that you can have, I guess, these kind of things happening. So it was good to see both of them in partnership together, and hopefully that can go on for quite a few years, because both of them are the same age, or around the same age anyway. So,
well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great to get your insights as well. So thank you so much. It's been much appreciated.
Yes, I've enjoyed it, and good to see Kieran again.
Nice seeing you. Nice chatting again.
Yep, you too.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for joining us on the PowettPlay Podcast, hosted by Kieran Powell and Jordan Shannon. We hope you enjoyed this immersive dive into the world of cricket and business, exploring the unique experiences and perspectives of players past and present, alongside those invaluable insights into intriguing business themes that transcend beyond the boundaries of sporting heroics. Be sure to set your reminders on your Alexa or Google Home device. Or we won't tell anyone if you still use those paper calendar things from a bygone era. Join us next time for more inspiring dialogue with scintillating minds on the PowettPlay Podcast.